Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
8:06 on this Thursday morning. Thanks for joining us. Hey, coming up in 30 minutes, Kevin Sorbo will join us, talk about his brand new book about fatherhood. Mercedes Schlapp, I just figured out why the Republicans did so well. 31-11, right? It's like, where did the Republicans get that kind of offensive output on the baseball diamond last night in the congressional baseball game? I just found out. You know who was there with them as their hitting coach?
Who?
Steve Garvey, Republican candidate for Senate in California, Major League Baseball Hall of Famer.
Oh, my. So that's the strategy.
That was it. Steve
I
Garvey
thought it was
taught him how
Roger
to hit.
Williams. Isn't Roger Williams also in the baseball world as well? He's Texas.
Yes, but Steve Garvey, come on.
No, that's pretty impressive. That explains everything.
And now, if he can take that kind of winning streak into the general election and beat Adam Schiff, that would be, talk
amazing.
About an earthquake out of California.
Yes.
Joining us right now is a good friend and one of our favorite guests. She, of course, is the amazing KT McFarland, former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Trump. Been in the foreign policy national security game going back to Henry Kissinger. KT, good to talk with you. Thanks for being here.
Well, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
There's a lot to discuss with you with regard to President Biden heading to Europe for the G7. But really quickly, you've been posting about this on the X platform quite a bit. The 51 intelligence professionals who altered the course of the 2020 election by falsely claiming that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. That was then used to censor innocent American citizens who were sharing that story and to demonize Miranda Devine, the reporter at the New York Post. The Justice Department just used that very same laptop as evidence in a criminal trial against Hunter Biden. So what now happens to those 51 intelligence officials?
Yeah, think about what they did. There was a person at the CIA, an employee of the Central Intelligence Agency, who at the direction of Tony Blinken, who was Biden's foreign policy advisor during the campaign, the CIA employee got in touch with former senior officials in the intelligence community and said, let's all do this letter. There's going to be a debate between Trump and Biden, and we want to make sure that Biden doesn't have to answer these questions about his son and the laptop and all the issues. So what did these guys do? They carefully lawyered a letter saying it has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation, knowing that when they put that out to the American public, that it would look like the intelligence community was saying that it was a Russian operation, that it wasn't a real laptop, it wasn't a Hunter Biden thing. And that did affect the election. I mean, the polls have all shown and that enough people would have been questioning Biden's role and all this, that it might have changed their votes. And we all know it was an election that was really just swung one way or the other by a couple thousand votes in a couple of key districts. So these intelligence officials did a disinformation campaign against the American people to affect the outcome of an election. This is not, they did it to the Russian people or to the Iranians. They did it to their own people. And nobody's had to account for it. Nobody's even apologized for it. It's all the evidence has now shown that they knew what they were doing and that they knew they were lying, but they did it anyway. And a lot of these people, in fact, I would assume most of them, still have their security clearances, which means they can continue to read classified information, which means they can continue to have lucrative government and defense industry contracts. They're getting rewarded for lying to the American people, and I think they have to be held accountable. At a minimum, they should lose their security clearances and forfeit the contracts.
Oh, yeah, and apologize. Because the damage is done. I do want to shift gears into President Biden. He's arrived at the G7 summit.
Yeah.
And there's some awkwardness when he's saluting or saluted the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. They're also looking to sign this 10-year security agreement with Ukraine at the G7 summit. I heard from one senator that, look, this war's for the long haul. I mean, how can we even continue to fund this war, especially knowing now that you have Russian fleets literally coming 90 miles from American shores here? I mean, this really seems like it's escalating.
Yeah, and I just returned. I've spent several trips going to Eastern Europe, meeting with Eastern European government officials and others in the Baltics. And the attitude is whatever it takes as long as it takes. In other words, we should continue to do whatever it takes, and as long as it takes. And then they look to the United States to be the one doing the whatever it is.
Yeah.
there's no. It's just baffling to me that the President of the United States has sent basically $100 billion in military assistance to Ukraine, and we've never had an explanation of what's the plan. How are we going to do? I mean, what's our goal here? And at all the meetings I've had, everybody states the obvious. Oh, it'd be terrible if Russia won. Oh, it'd be great if Ukraine won. Oh, we got to punish Putin. But nobody has a plan to how you're going to do that.
Yeah.
And by just putting money at it without a plan, we're in another forever war. It sounds like it sounds like Afghanistan all over again. I don't mind doing it. I just want a plan. And as long as oil prices remain high, that's how Russia is paying for this war, with their windfall profits from high oil prices thanks to Joe Biden's energy policy. And the way to really stop the war is to bankrupt Russia by driving down energy prices, which a President Donald Trump knows how to do. When he was president, it was $40 a barrel. It's double, triple that now, and during the Biden presidency. So what's Putin done with all that money? What Russians always do when they get that kind of money. They invade their neighbors, they build up their military, and have proxy wars.
Yeah. KT McFarland, the president plans to kick off the G7 summit by signing a 10-year security agreement between U.S. and Ukraine. How binding is that? This isn't a treaty?
Not at all.
So it's just this is just
okay,
a demonstration.
So if you have a treaty with a country, that means the president proposes it, and the Senate confirms it, and the whole United States government is in on it. We all agree to it. Right. That's like the defense treaty we have for NATO. This is an executive order, which means it's the president, while he's president, can basically have his little wish list and do it, but it ceases to be effective 3 minutes after he's out of office. Okay. So I don't think it's fair to the Ukrainians to say, look, we promise we're going to give you 10 years of aid, when he knows he can't live up to that promise.
Yeah, it's all for show.
It just falls out. Look, one thing that really made me mad is I met with a Polish foreign minister 2 weeks ago, and he was scoffing at the United States contribution. He said, look, the reason Ukraine is losing this war slowly is that the United States aid didn't come in time, or the United States is putting restrictions on how its weapons can be used. And then he had the audacity to say, look, Ukraine's only costing America 4% of its defense budget. They certainly could do more. And then he said in the argument that they're not giving Ukraine ammunition is because we need it for our own forces. He then scoffed and said, really? Are you going to fire bullets into China, America? I think the attitude needs
Wow. That's arrogant.
Yeah. I do want to ask, though, we don't have time to get into Israel right now, KT, sadly, but just to follow up on Ukraine. In the 90s, after the breakup of the Soviet Union, Ukraine did possess nuclear weapons, and they had every right to keep them to defend themselves. America, under Bill Clinton, we talked them into getting rid of them. And promises were made that we would defend them at the time, right? I mean, do you feel like we do have some level of obligation to Ukraine?
That's always been up for grabs. Some people have said that we gave them an ironclad commitment. Others said, well, they never got it in writing. And then other people said, look, it never happened. So I can't adjudicate that decision that was made under previous administrations. What I can look at now is to say, yeah, it would be great if Ukraine won. Yeah, it'd be great if Russia lost. But how? Tell me how. Yeah. And how is we're not going to beat them on the battlefield. They've got plenty of money and plenty of bodies to throw at this war for a long time. And so the best way is to bankrupt. That's how Ronald Reagan won the Cold War. He bankrupted the Soviet Union. We could bankrupt Russia again in a matter of months.
Just cut off the oil spigot. That's all it takes.
Yep.
All right, KT, always great, always enlightening, always educational, and that's all I got for you.
You make us smarter every day.
Really do.
Thank you both very much.
That's all we ask for. KT McFarland. It's 8:15.